A community that knows itself takes care of itself. The stories of those who live in the Mat-Su borough are as varied as the people themselves. Some you have heard. Some perhaps you have not. This is Voices of the Mat-Su, bringing our stories to life.
I'm Emily Forstner, your host today. We talk about the community on this program and the smaller groups found within it. And over the last year, we've learned a lot about the people who live here, the blind, the refugees, and the people who join us in the Happy Run. My life is better for their stories. My perspective has changed. And today, we have a story of families searching for a home. We meet two parents who have experienced homelessness in the Valley. In Act 1, we meet a young man born and raised in the Valley who was homeless at the age of 16 and finds himself once again looking for a home, only this time as a father. And in Act 2, we meet a mom, newly relocated to Alaska, who finds herself and children sleeping in their car in the dead of winter just 2 years ago. But now, she opens her home to struggling families. Both stories remind us of the fragile security so many face and what we call, there's no place like home.
My name is Joshua Weeks. Started actually not long ago. My daughter and I were living in a nice cabin, and we were living there, and I was working for the property owner in exchange for rent. I thought it was working well. I was doing projects. My daughter and I, it was quiet there. We had a creek in the front yard. It was peaceful. Which is really what I wanted out of somewhere for us to be, is peace. But that peace was not very long-lived.
Joshua believed the cabin would be their last stop. They'd been between housing situations for years. He calls it being in transition. By the time they'd settled in the cabin, his daughter had been in 4 different schools. The cabin would help this to be the longest time in one school for his daughter, and things were going well. But the landlord split with their partner and gave Joshua 2 days' notice to relocate.
And it was heartbreaking, because there's nothing I want more for my daughter than stability, security, peace, and the fact that I really just want to keep my daughter at the same school. She's making friends now. She knows the staff at the school, and she's used to it. So if I can help it, I'd like to keep her at the same school. And then we got out and we transitioned into my godparents' house, which was not far away.
As communities all around us face a housing crisis and increasing homeless populations, we also struggle with knowing how to talk about it. Are the people experiencing the lack of secure housing rough sleepers? Or are they houseless, unhoused, or homeless?
I would use the term homeless because, by definition, my daughter and I are homeless. We don't have our own home to reside in. We don't even really have a temporary place to stay in longer than a few days. It's kind of why we are where we are right now. We're in transition. We're homeless. And like I said, it's not specifically our fault, but it's the consequence that we have to pay.
Joshua is settled in Wasilla in a small apartment when he learns that his daughter was in the hospital in Soldotna, malnourished, sick with pertussis, and in foster care. He makes weekly drives to Kenai for supervised visits. A year later, Joshua and his daughter are a family in the apartment together.
And that's when her journey with me began.
It becomes a story of, this is good, no, this is bad. They live in the apartment exactly a year. Things are looking good. Then unruly and full-time partying neighbors force a move to Palmer to another apartment, and that's good until it isn't.
We had to suddenly leave there because there was a mentally sick tenant that lived downstairs who set the building on fire.
They moved to Eagle River into a mother-in-law apartment owned by a parishioner in their church community. But the unit sells within 6 months, and they have to move back to Wasilla and another apartment. It floods. They lose furniture, their beds.
Never got compensated for it. So you can see this whole journey of us going from one place to another, it's not by choice. I didn't want to bounce us around so much. But it's just been a struggle. I'm disabled. I have a disability. And my income has been limited. And that is what brought us to the cabin.
You have to know that Joshua is no stranger to being homeless. He left home at 16. It's called being an unaccompanied youth.
You know, my dad had drug problems. My grandma had anger issues. I lived with my dad and grandma growing up, and I didn't want to be part of that. So I couch surfed for a couple of years, stayed with friends here and there, found somewhere to sleep. I think I was about 18 when I started working for my house in Wasilla, and they created a recycling job for me as a recycling coordinator and a custodian. So I had some sort of income, and I began to build myself back up a little bit.
Someone gives him a tent and not one, but 2 sleeping bags. And Joshua lives in the woods off of Wasilla Fishhook.
It was freezing. Sometimes I would be able to sneak to my car, but then I lost my car because the engine gave out, and then all I had was my tent and my sleeping cot. So I really was there in the middle of all of it in the woods. It was cold. I was lonely. I went to work every day, though, did my laundry and showered at work and just pushed myself.
He's working hard. He enrolls in Mat-Su Central School as well and graduates.
But it was still cold. In the winter in Alaska, even 2 sleeping bags isn't enough. In fact, I got so desperate for warmth that I knew a church that wasn't far away. And I would make my way, I would walk down the road as long as it took to get there at night. And I knew that they always kept their basement unlocked and there was a heater not breaking in. I knew the pastor there. He permitted this because I spoke with him. But I would sleep near the heater in the basement of the church some nights when it was just too cold for the tent and everything was frozen solid.
Joshua finds a spare room in a house until he goes to the Alaska Job Corps in Palmer. And there he completes the building technology program and attends Mat-Su College for 2 years. Already a lifetime lived.
And I earned my Associate of Arts. That was around the time, about 6 months after I moved into that apartment is when my daughter came home to me.
For now, Joshua and his daughter are in transition again, sleeping downstairs in someone's house.
We only have a few more days left, and then we're just out of places. We're out of options. It's scary, actually. It's intimidating because I want to be a good father, and I want to provide for my daughter, and I will continue to do so. I won't give up. But all the setbacks and all the times we've been knocked down after getting back up again, it's a lot. But we're getting back up again. We just don't know where we're going this time, which direction we're headed yet. I used to struggle with feeling ashamed to ask for help. It used to be hard. Some people, it's really hard. People want to help themselves or they're afraid. But it really is okay. And I think in a lot of respects, it takes great strength to admit you need help and actually ask for it. It's not a cowardly thing to do. It's a very brave thing to do.
He has asked for help from Family Promise and the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation.
And it's wonderful. They help a lot of people. They really do.
And with Families in Transition, or FIT. FIT is a federal program granted through the Mat-Su School District.
They've helped provide school supplies. They've helped provide gas cards so that I could afford to drive her to school and pick her up from school. They've helped with clothing vouchers for thrift stores. They've helped with paying for school field trips. She wouldn't have got school supplies this year if it wasn't for them, just because we were transitioning. And it wasn't exactly a smooth transition, but they were there to help us sort of get through that. And they're still there to this day.
Joshua may be homeless, but not necessarily hungry.
It seems to me that when people know you're homeless, the first thing they want to do is offer you food, because that's the easiest thing for anyone to offer to someone is, here's a meal, here's a snack.
Let's take a break and just talk statistics for a minute. The 2021 Mat-Su Homelessness Assessment assumes, notice, they assume there are 189 families with children who are without secure housing.
There's just not enough housing right now for the amount of people who need it. It's very limited.
So the question is, can we also assume there are more families without secure housing 3 years later, when we consider that according to the most recent report through the State Department of Labor and Workforce Development, that the Mat-Su has a 2-bedroom apartment vacancy rate of 4%. Zillow reports that the average 2-bedroom apartment in Wasilla rents for $1,500 plus utilities, and on October 1, there were, wait for it, 22 available.
You need a job, you need a house, you need transportation, but then you don't know where to start. What do I need first, right? And it's really hard to say. I could describe it as, it kind of feels like you're going in a circle almost, because when you apply for a job, you have to put down an address on a job application, but you need a job to afford a home to live in or an apartment to live in. And so it's kind of like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? It feels debilitating. You can feel alone, you can feel confused, you don't know where to start. Well, sometimes you feel like there is no starting place. The one thing that I wish more people could understand is that when someone's homeless, it's not necessarily their fault. There's a stereotype that's pretty common where people jump to the assumption that if someone's homeless, it's always a direct result of a choice they made or something they didn't do. Oh, this person probably did drugs. This person probably drank. This person probably didn't pay their bills. That's not always the case. Because then it does create this idea that people in that community aren't worth helping. But people struggle in real life. I know more than one person who is or has been homeless when it was not their fault. And so I just hope people can take a moment to realize that maybe something happened to them and not because of them. Sometimes we can fall into these patterns where we kind of feel hopeless and we're not sure where to go. So sometimes we don't know how to try to get out of that situation, and it can take some time to realize which direction to go in. But I can say that I'm still trying to get out of that cycle, and I hope that I find my way out, for my daughter and I.
Being homeless as a teen and young adult is significantly different than being a parent and homeless.
When you become a parent, your focus shifts from self to child. In most cases, I hope. I know it did for me. And everything that I wanted to do moving forward was for her. She's very resilient. She's a brave soul. All she ever wants is for her and Dad to stay together. And that's what I want too.
One word, just one word, I asked Joshua. If you were the voice for the families facing homelessness, what would you say?
Someone once told me, as long as you get up one more time than you've fallen down, you're still winning. So always get back up no matter what. Get back up. Keep moving. Even when you don't know where to move to, just keep moving. And you'll find your way eventually.
That's exactly what Joshua has done. He has a new job.
With Durham School Services as a bus driver, in training.
You've been listening to Joshua Weeks on Voices of the Mat-Su, produced for Big Cabbage Radio in Palmer, Alaska. Coming up next in our episode, There's No Place Like Home, is Act 2. When we hear from another family, a mother and her 2 teen children who move across the country only to find themselves homeless. It's a story that is a phoenix rising from the ashes.
I'm from New Jersey. They call it Jersey Strong or a tough Jersey girl, but it's only because we don't live here.
Melissa Prickett is Jersey Strong. It's January, and she finds herself homeless in a strange town with 2 teens parked behind the Kozlowski building in Palmer.
I remember crying in the Vagabond Blues, and there was a young girl there, and she had said that her and her mom had experienced something close to it, so she understood. And we stayed behind the Vagabond Blues.
This is a story of homelessness. It begins, though, with a story of great loss.
I had crawled outside and was pulling up grass, screaming. Because I don't know, it was like some kind of innate thing when I got the call that he was killed. I don't even know how I ended up outside.
An airbag deployed, and the driver bloody, distraught, and confused. No weapons, no drugs, no alcohol. And Melissa's husband, Roy Jackal, was shot and killed by Cape May, New Jersey police.
Did not call medical until after they shot him. So it drove me crazy.
Melissa had worked 20 years as property manager in Cape May. She managed luxury condos on oceanfront property.
It's a summer place. It's supposed to be happy. There's pools. It's a 17-acre community. So I had all of these homeowners that I had worked with for 20 years asking me how I'm doing every day, telling me, aren't I glad that I had something else to focus on? And I'm like, you think? I just was so angry. I couldn't care about their summer happiness.
At the same time, her sister lives in Wasilla. Her parents are going to move to Sutton to start a homestead. It doesn't take much to convince her to come with.
It was so easy just to sell my house and run away. But I think it just felt good to be able to burn down my world.
Growing up had been hard for Melissa. Her father was a dominating figure in the family and at times physically abusive. She wanted to believe that this was her chance to have the family she never had as a child. So less than a year after having lost her world, Melissa quits her job, sells her house, loads up mementos of Roy, and she and her 2 children make their way to the Mat-Su.
I don't know if it would be different or if I'd feel different had I stayed in New Jersey. But I think part of the trek out here and just the complete change of everything is different.
Melissa puts all of her eggs in one basket when she moves to Alaska, and she really believes that this time it's going to work out. It's going to be different than when she was growing up.
I think it was because I was homeless as a kid, you know? I always used to run downstairs when my dad would come at me, and I'd always try to run out that back door, but I was always afraid, so I'd stop at the same spot in the kitchen and just cower. And then one day I finally did. I ran out that door. For a while, I was asking friends, and it got hard because it was school year, and I was in high school. There was times where I stayed underneath the boardwalk. There's not a lot of programs, and if you want to get in a program, you basically have to be I don't want to say snitch, but I didn't want to talk about my dad. I didn't want that to be a reason why I was going to get help.
But it's not different.
I'm in my
Her dad
40s,
hasn't
and I could
changed.
not- I
Only
had
this
my
time,
hands in
he
his
attacks
hair trying to
her
pull
son.
him off of my son, and I couldn't budge him.
She grabs her kids and a trash bag full of clothes. Melissa doesn't look back.
We got here in October 2021, and by January, we were homeless.
That's how Melissa finds herself sleeping in her car with her children in the parking lot behind Vagabond Blues.
I had that cushion that you can buy to put on, like a topper for your bed, and I had cut it so that we could fit it in the back, and I would throw all of the trash bag that I had grabbed and put it up front, and then we would go into the back like sardines, and I would pray. I was staying up, being a sardine in the back of the van, and a lot of time to think and pray. You know, a lot of it was just thinking out loud to God. More of it was arguing. It wasn't really talking, to be honest with you. I was very angry. I'm still angry. So I'm losing this. I lost the dream and the future from my husband, and now I'm losing this dream that I started trying to have. It was really hard.
Do you think hard describes it?
No, I can't even describe it. I can't put it into words. It's like your brain fractures and you set it aside. And that's why you can only think of hard, because you dissociate with it. You know, it's the only thing that stinks is grief and fear hit you at night.
It's one step in front of the other. Her son has graduated and looks for work. Her daughter is enrolled in Mat-Su Central and takes theater at Colony High.
We were 2 days homeless, and she was up on the stage. And I said, you know, we're in a new place with no place to stay, and here's this girl singing her heart out and really trying, and I'm so proud. We were lucky because I had that vehicle, you know, and we were lucky because, again, I knew that that I had this money pending to come into, that was going to be going into my account. So I didn't have a fear of like, okay, if we need to buy some hot dogs. And that's what we did. We bought hot dogs. I made a fire outside. And I was like, let's roast some, hot dogs outside. And thank God it wasn't any longer than it was.
Melissa and her children stay in hotels until she finds a room to rent in a home. But bad luck can follow bad luck sometimes. The landlord is an alcoholic with violent and suicidal rages. There's no way Melissa and her children are going to be able to stay there and stay safe.
And I'm like, what the heck is happening in the middle of winter in Alaska? There's no places to stay. And because I also didn't know even where to look, I'm Googling, in my car, trying to find places. And then I had Francesca Brunello call me from Families in Transition. And she said she got her number from Tara at Lily's school. And I was mortified because I've never been in this situation. Coming from where I came from, it was like one of those things where I made stuff happen. I was such a control freak because of where I came from as a child. I never saw myself at this age losing my husband and then being homeless in Alaska. So it was like, no, they're not going to help me find housing. and if they do, like, I didn't feel like I deserve, I just got here. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't put taxes in this place. I didn't pay. I felt like, who am I to even be able to utilize this program?
Melissa gives a lot of credit to the kindness of the staff in the school district who work with families in transition.
I was such a mess. I'm bawling my eyes out over my husband, and she would sit and listen, and then I'd feel bad because that's not her job. And I knew that she needed to go on to the next call. She had parents that she was trying to find kids to choose for, so they could go to school. And, she always would show up with backpacks and all the baby's clothes and stuff in the back of her car. And, she had a parent that they didn't have running water. Like, they're in the same situation and they have littles. My main thing was to try to find housing, try to find stability for my kids. I mean, I'm considered a single parent now, and with one income, you cannot afford to pay a rent here. The rental market is so high, and they want to see 2 times, monthly, that you're making the rent that month, or 3 times the rent that month. And the low-income housing, like I said, I put in multiple applications and spent hundreds of dollars on applications to be told that you're number 22 in line. Meanwhile, I was driving around different places trying to put in applications, trying to find a suitable home because I needed to cook my kids dinner. It's like these little things that you don't think are so important. And it's like, I just want to be able to sit at a table and eat with my kids. You know what I mean? Like, and not be sitting at the Valley Hotel and on these little tiny beds that they have. But I just wanted to be a mom, and I just felt like I couldn't do enough.
She doesn't give up, but there aren't many oceanfront condos in the Mat-Su. Through the kindness of an unrelated realtor, Melissa lands a job with Keller Williams Realty and a second job with Mr. Appliance. But there remains the matter of a home.
I kept thinking I just want to go home, but it wasn't New Jersey. I just wanted a home. You ever, you have that saying like, I just want to go home. And that's what I kept saying over and over. I just want to go home. But when I was saying it, I wasn't picturing my house on 40 Solar Way in New Jersey. I was picturing Roy. I saw this place on Lazy Mountain, and because we had started leaving the house to not be there so much, we were going on hikes. And Lazy Mountain was one of the most beautiful hikes I had ever seen. And it made me feel close to my husband because he wrote about nature. And so if there's any place that made you believe in magic and fairies and that kind of stuff, it's this hike. I mean, it's just beautiful. And then to see a listing on Lazy Mountain that offered owner finance, I really felt like it was my husband or a sign, like, here's a safe place.
Her boss, Tyler at Keller Williams, tries to talk her out of it. But Jersey strong or Jersey stubborn, Melissa insists on buying the abandoned and broken home on Lazy Mountain. In her words, she had to napalm the place. They close everything off except a small room with some electric heaters and sleep on cots for a while. It takes 9 months to make the house livable.
And there's times where, like, I make jokes, like maybe Tyler was right. The first time I drove down that mountain and it snowed, I was like, we're going to die. And I was trying hard because I wanted my kids to want to stay. I didn't want this to be a mistake. I didn't know if it was.
Homelessness is directly connected to the loss of a community. There is a 1-to-1 correlation. Whether it's not belonging to a community at large or with the smaller ones that offer us a sense of place, homelessness and aloneness go hand in hand. And like a phoenix rising from the ashes, Melissa finds a community.
I just meet people and they tend to open up to me and they ask me to go to their church or they want to stop by and, hey, I notice you got all of these pieces of a chainsaw, but not a full chainsaw. Let me help you. I had the maintenance guys that worked with Tyler that came up to help. Part of the upstairs deck was falling down and they were like, no, you need this new post. I bought the post. They brought it up and I couldn't believe, like, here's these guys that are just willing to do this. But every time I got stuck on that hay flat, I would go onto the Facebook forum and send out a notice and say, hey, it's the Jersey girl again. I'm stuck. And 5 people would show up.
Just showing up. That's what community's about sometimes. And that's exactly what Melissa does. She's got a home now. So what does she do?
We had a family of Ukrainians, refugees, that were supposed to be helped when they got here, and then, something fell through. They were an amazing family, and honestly, 3 weeks flew by.
Another time she housed a teen who had been kicked out of their home and needed a safe place to land until they finished high school. That's what Melissa does. Because Melissa knows.
It's hard to actually say it until you are in that situation. And people that have never been unhoused, it's hard for them to understand how someone would be in that situation. But I think that people need to understand that you're not always in that situation because you are a bad person. Not everybody is in the situation because they put themselves there. You have things that happen outside of your control. Honestly, I'm working multiple jobs to try to keep the place that I have now. And it would just take me losing one of them.
One word, just one word I ask, if you were to be the voice of the homeless.
I don't even know. Part of me is like, God bless you. I keep trying. You got to find that right person. Honestly, the person needs to be you. You can't give up. I was joking around about being hypnotized, but I don't want to forget Roy. Because he made me, and he loved me. And he danced with me in our kitchen. He showed me Otis Redding and all of these old records and this music that I would never have listened to.
The homeless are often invisible. They can be the children playing at recess, and the ones singing on stage, the mom working 2 jobs, the dad looking for one more chance and one more floor to sleep on. Getting to know these stories, I have come to believe that the story of homelessness is nothing short of a love story, because there's no place like home. Listeners wanting to know more or know of ways to support or perhaps seek help yourself can contact Mat-Su Connect, Families in Transition, or the Mat-Su Coalition on Housing and Homelessness through the United Way for a complete listing and resources. And that's it for today's episode of Voices in the Mat-Su. If you have a story or know of someone who does, contact us at voices@bigcabbageradio.org. Until next time, it's been nice getting to know each other a little bit more. Special thanks to the Big Cabbage editorial board and sound editor Emma Keachley. Thanks for listening. Stay good out there, Mat-Su.
This was Voices of the Mat-Su, sharing stories told by those who live in the Mat-Su borough. To revisit this and past stories, go to bigcabbageradio.org. This project is funded by a grant from the Mat-Su Health Foundation and is produced by Emily Forstner for Big Cabbage Radio. The views expressed in Voices of the Mat-Su do not represent the views of Big Cabbage Radio or the Mat-Su Health Foundation. Comments or questions about this show may be sent to voices@bigcabbageradio.org.